Hey guys, welcome back to Loudmouth Fisticuffs. We are back, episode number 5, and of course, everybody knows by now the whole coronavirus is taking over the world by storm. But today's not all about it. We're going to touch on it, of course. This isn't a sad podcast. This isn't dreary. We're not making this, the sole focus of it. So please, I don't want you to think that that's not going to be depressing. We're going to make the best of the situation, as all of you should as well. That's what it's about. My man, Jeff Houston, what's going on, my friend?
Are you kidding? I'm having an awesome time over here. Live show number 5 here from Quarantine Central, man. All is well. I mean, yeah, there's some shit going on around the world that's kind of making us keep that 6-foot rule away from one another. And, everybody in the U.S. is going batshit crazy, buying all kinds of toilet paper and water. Toilet paper I still haven't been able to grasp, but something who's going to come out of this smelling like a rose, even though that we're talking about toilet paper, is going to be the plumbers. Man, the plumbers are going to be all blinged out, man. They're going to look like extras on Coming to America, man. I mean, more bling than Flavor Flav, man. And they're going to show it because they're the ones who are going to be getting all of that unnecessary toilet paper unclogged from your fucking toilets. People, I'm going to tell you, we're not going to get into this too much, but the one thing I am going to start off by saying is that panicking in this situation is the absolute worst thing that you could possibly do. I don't understand why you feel that you have to go and stockpile. You're thinking that this is the end of days, that this is the zombie apocalypse. I mean, you've seen way too many fucking movies, number one. What you need to be doing is you need to be thinking about this as a temporary change. Go to the grocery store like you normally would. Try to stay outside of those I swear to God, those young fucks that are down in Fort Lauderdale that are still living up their spring break out in public. I mean, guys, I understand that you feel that your social livelihood is being put on hold, and you're going to be the rebel going against the man saying, oh, well, it's not going to stop our bad time. I'm like, that's not what it's about, you selfish fucks. What it's about is that, yes, you are younger people you are the younger generation who can still be a carrier and still mess up people who have respiratory situations and the elderly. So guess what? You're going to have deaths on your hands because your good time just can't be interrupted, even though that this is a worldwide pandemic. Now, is it a pandemic? Yes. Yes, it is. Is it one that probably we're going to get over a little bit easier than other? I think so, because in the grand scheme of things, the majority of people who are carriers, who are infected, are going to get over it with zero issue. It's always going to be the elderly and the ones with, respiratory issues and pre-existing conditions. So the best thing you can do, guys, I hate to say it, just have yourself a staycation. Stay the fuck home. If you don't have to go out, don't go out right now. I know, you don't want to, believe into the media hype and everything, but this is a little bit different. It's unprecedented, Josh. Am I right? I mean, we've never experienced anything like this in our lifetimes. And the sad part about it is that a lot of us are directly affected, myself included, because, all of my livelihood, which is combat sports, has literally been shut down. And even Dana White went out swinging. He wanted to make sure that at least he would have, a closed door event. Set only, but unfortunately he couldn't even do that because, there are powers that be that are even over Dana White. And I think that was a big reality check for him, because as powerful as he believes that he is in this world, I hate to say it, man, you're not the most powerful. There are people that govern over you, and there are people that are above you. And I think that was a big bite of reality that he did not ingest too well, because we got 3 UFCs that are off, 2 from that were going to go from the Apex and, of course, the London show. And now they're going to have to find a different spot for UFC 249 with Ferguson and Nurmagomedov. And I'm thinking, Josh, that they're probably going to head over towards Dubai or somewhere in the UAE to possibly, make that swing. But even then, I don't know what's going on with the world. I'm going to take a breath for a minute because I talk so fucking much, but we've got so much to talk about. There's so much stupidity in the world that I'm trying to get a sense of lucidity, amongst us all.
In case you're wondering, Jeff is on fire today. So Jeff, I want to circle back to a couple things you were talking about, man. Again, I don't want to over talk about it because, of course, every other person and their mama are talking about it.
I'm
but
sick of fucking hearing about it, but it is reality.
It's reality, and yeah, it's something that me or you in our lifetimes we've never seen anything like it. I want to touch back to the very beginning. Toilet paper for a fucking respiratory illness makes no sense to me. I don't know. Maybe somebody could break it down in the comments for me. I don't know. I still don't understand. Matter of fact, me and the wife went to Target yesterday, and I'm counting toilet paper, toilet paper, toilet paper. Like every other person had a fucking 12-pack of toilet paper in their hands, and I'm like, I don't understand. Are you scared you won't be able to wipe your ass? I don't understand. Like, is there a fear? Is there something happening to where you think that you're not going to be able to wipe your ass because you're going to be in quarantine that long or something? I don't fully get it. The second point is talk about the word pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. This word has been blown out of proportion, and a lot of people don't truly know, right? People associate the word pandemic when I don't know, a week ago now, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, when WHO designated that we were in a global pandemic now. A lot of people are like, oh my God, end of the world, this is it. Folks, if you don't know, the word pandemic does nothing to do with necessarily the severity of the virus or anything like that. All it's talking about is essentially it's in multiple locations, okay, around the globe.
No, this is what it means. This is what it means. This is the literal definition of the word. Of a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. Now, right. But that's not talking about its severity.
Correct.
It's talking about the fact that it is prevalent almost everywhere. That's what pandemic means.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a fatal pandemic. Because it is in some cases, but it's also in the most extreme cases, as we said before.
Right.
If you have respiratory issues, you're at risk. If you are 70 plus, you're at risk. If you have severe diabetes, you are at risk. Right. If you have pre-existing respiratory conditions, you are at risk. So just like anything else, I mean, that could be anybody, even with the regular strains of flu. Right. With the regular strains of flu, I don't remember people going this crazy when the bird flu pandemic came out in 2009, 2010, and we had over 20,000 Americans die in a very short amount of time. And I don't remember anybody panicking there because it was more isolated in the United States as opposed to going everywhere. And the minute everybody starts seeing, 200 more cases here, 300 cases more here, 5 more deaths, 10 more deaths, and everything. I'm like, are you kidding me? People die a million times over on heart disease and obesity, and nobody's panicking about that. And the reason that is because the media, the minute they get that their fat celluloid claws into this, they blow it out of proportion because they thrive on selling fear. Now, I'm not going to be one of these conspiracy theorists, and I'm not going to sit here and say,
Jeff, I will. Damn it, be it. Be the conspiracy theorist, Jeff.
The reason why I'm not going to do it is because I told you before, I'm not politically involved. I am not a politically inclined person. I don't care about anybody else's political agenda that may be tied into this. The only thing that I give a fuck about, as of right now, is that we slow this down to prevent loss of life. Number one, we slow it down so less die. Number two, we slow it down so I can get the fuck back to work. Because unfortunately, just this time around, we were over getting ready for BKFC 11. We were in Wichita. We had already done the final press conference. Everybody was jacked. Everybody was excited. We had a decent amount of media come out. We were over at Mel Hambleton's Ford over in Wichita. We had the weigh-ins the very next day at the host hotel where we were at. And then, of course, on Saturday, it would have been at the InTrust Bank Arena. And from what we heard, it was a complete sellout. It was it would have been the biggest audience to date that Bare Knuckle has had live. And we did everything that we possibly could. I can tell you one thing. David Feldman and Dave Feldman Jr. were doing everything that they possibly could. And our good buddy Sean Wheelock, for those of you who don't know, is also a representative on the Kansas Athletic Commission. So he was doing everything that he could. But unfortunately, when something is handed down from the governor of the state, there's very, very little that can happen, because what was happening is that we were almost set for a closed door arena. But unfortunately, what happened is that the governor and the mayor, they didn't want anybody who was not a Kansas resident to be there, because they could be a potential carrier. I mean, not like anybody from Kansas couldn't be a potential carrier. I think that there were just too many what ifs that, got them nervous about that, even in a closed door situation. So, they had to pull the plug. But the best thing is that it's not canceled, it's postponed. We have to push it off. As of right now, it's pushed off until June. We're hoping that we can get back to business as usual by May. Because we did have an April show that was set to go in Birmingham. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it is what it is. And we're not the only ones that are affected by this when it comes to the combat sports. Everyone is, and not just one or two people, everyone. And for those of you who are still holding the shows, as much as I love your spirit to kind of grind through it, I still think it's a mistake as of right now, because it's best to just do what we're told to do right now and just socially distance ourselves from one another, and just, self-quarantine, even if we don't have it. Self-quarantine for a while, take care of ourselves, and make sure that we don't pass this along to the individuals who are most affected. So, it's so disheartening, Josh. I've never had to do anything in 17 years of announcing. I've never had to do anything like this. And you know me, man, I'm a performer, and there's nothing that, that breaks my heart more than being that close to an awesome event and having to turn right back around and go home. I hated it, but I understood it.
Just for the record, it is official. 12 is postponed too. So
good.
The Athletic Commission did release a statement, and then Dave Feldman confirmed it right after that. So okay. It is official, postponed.
It's the right thing to do.
Right. It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. And I know that it broke Dave's heart. I know it did, because Dave is a pioneer in this field, and he wants to give the world, bare knuckle fighting at its best. And he was going to. So there's always the next show. Unfortunately, the next show is probably several months off, and that's just the reality of the situation. But we have to think about the safety of everyone, and most importantly, we have to think about the safety of the fight fans and the fighters that are putting their asses on the line to step into the squared circle and do what they do best. I was hanging out with the fighters after, it's the damnedest thing. I'm going to tell you about what happened after the show was canceled. A bunch of us went down to the Ambassador Hotel, and we found in downtown Wichita, and Dave Rickles was the hookup on that one, because he was, he's a local guy. So we were going to this hotel, and like, how good can a bar be? It looks like pretty simple hotel. Dude, it was a fucking, prohibition speakeasy basement bar. It was badass, man. Oh, we had a great time. And the mood was unlike anything that I've ever seen before, because there was disappointment, but there wasn't anger. Right. There wasn't anger in the air, because who are you going to be angry about? I mean, This was not a situation.
Mother Nature?
This was not a situation that was caused by the promoter, by the Athletic Commission. This is a situation that the entire world, unfortunately, is going through right now. So there was an incredible camaraderie at the bar, and spirits were a hell of a lot brighter than I anticipated them to. And of course, we got drunk. We had a great time. I got to go do some karaoke downtown Wichita. Of course, I tore it up because I'm amazing. And, went home the next day. But the weird thing is, Josh, I don't feel like I went home with my tail between my legs. It didn't feel that way at all. It was just the situation, and we have to adapt. And, no matter what, there's always going to be people above us, the government. No one person is above the government. So you have to kind of make do with the situation at hand. We have. And now we're just looking forward to seeing how much ass we are going to kick once this pandemic has passed us and we resume life as usual.
Yeah, I'm hoping sooner than later, man. And like I said, the May event. Oh my God, I can't wait. I hope that and I was kind of joking around with somebody. I'm hoping maybe Dave just kind of creates like a huge WrestleMania possibly super card or something. I don't know, just to kind of, I don't know, maybe make
Well,
up.
speaking of that, I mean, you know as well as I do, if we're talking about WrestleMania, the damnedest thing this year, man, the damnedest thing. I've already sat through a Raw and a SmackDown on a closed set at the Performance Center, and it's the damnedest thing that I've ever seen. But I understand why there's not just wrestling happening, that they have to splice in pay-per-view stuff and everything like, in between, because you can't have just a regular wrestling show sans fans. You have to have a lot of content spliced into it to make it work. But I don't know if you've already heard this. Of course, WrestleMania this year is going to emanate from the Performance Center, and it's actually going to be a 2-day event.
2 days, yeah.
It's going to be Saturday and Sunday. They are making the best out of a bad situation. I know that Vince is pissed about this. Vince wanted to hold out as much as possible.
And multiple locations.
At multiple locations to make it happen, but it's just there's too much risk, unfortunately. And Vince, I guess, as much as he wants it, he doesn't want to be responsible for pushing something that could have easily been prevented, and we just have to roll with the punches. And I know he hates it because Vince doesn't really feel that there's a whole lot above him other than maybe God. So I mean, that's just the way that his
God, if that in certain cases,
if that, I mean, he could even think that God may have bought a ticket to see the show.
You owe me, you're fired.
Let me tell you something, God. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you one thing. It's all about ruthless aggression. I could see Vince having that kind of a chip on his shoulder, absolutely. But you know what? I tell people, something. People say it's going to suck. It's going to suck. I'm like, are you kidding? Nothing like this has happened in the history of pro wrestling. I say fucking enjoy it, because we'll probably never see it again. Not like this, to where it's closed, to where we're under these situations, to where it's the most unique situation to ever happen in modern human history as of right now. So I say, dude, enjoy it, because it will be the most memorable WrestleMania you will ever. You'll never forget this one. You'll never forget this one.
I'm going to play the other side of the fence here. I hated Raw and SmackDown. And I understand they had to do what they had to do. And it's not even so much, I'm not blaming the workers. I'm not blaming, the commentators did great. The actual performers themselves did fine. It's not that I have a problem with them. My issue is with whoever was running that production. And I'll explain it. I think that whoever made the decision. Okay, let me backtrack before I say that. So, for instance, we've all seen shows, we've all been to shows where maybe all the tickets didn't quite sell in the arena. What do they usually do if it's on television? They'll black out the seats, or they'll turn it off,
or they'll make a tight shot.
Or they'll make it. Yeah, right. They'll make the tight shot with, you don't use the big wide angle lenses and all. Right.
You don't like the fact that they're doing that they're showing empty seats. You don't like that.
Correct. So here's my thing. I think it would have looked that much better if they just made the shots a little tighter. If they blacked out the seats around the arena. If they did it old school style, where it's just a light on the ring and that's it. You don't see anything else. Like, make it old school 80s, wrestling, where it's just the light above the ring and that's it, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Make it something like that. The one scene in question, and I thought it was the most awful thing I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
There was the scene with Stone Cold. He was in the ring because it's 316 day and all that's fine. I love me.
He looked like he was already drunk before he hit the ring.
Probably was. He probably was.
Dude, he did a lean back with two Steve Weisers and hit the mat. I was like, oh fuck yeah, man. That's the Steve Austin I remember.
But he was, give me a hell yeah. And then,
are you kidding? I love that.
But then the camera pans to the empty seats, and then he does it again.
No, I love that, man. I'm like, because it never happened before, and that's why it was so unique. It was so unique because it never happened. No, Steve is making the best out of a bad situation, and the only one out of anyone who was on commentary who was going to mark out at all. I mean, come on, that much is obvious. The one who gets the most crap out of anybody. Come on now, you know his name.
You talking about Saxton? What are you talking about?
Yes, Byron Saxton. Yeah. Byron Saxton has gotten more crap because I guess he just tries to play this nice young straight look and everything, straight man look face, and he got shat on by JBL. Oh my God, JBL, when he was when he was commentating with JBL, he was merciless on Saxton. And then of course, Michael Cole never really shot on Saxton. It was what's his name, Corey Graves. Corey Graves was merciless on Saxton, and Saxton had to be kind of the sacrificial lamb of the bit, who took the multiple stunners, which he was fine doing, because if you're going to take a stunner, who better to do it than having a beer with freaking Stone Cold Steve Austin. I would have taken that stunner any day of the week, twice on Sunday, and I would have had to turn around on my stomach because I'd have too much of a smile on my face that if I saw that on camera, he'd actually kick my ass.
Take the stunner Rock style. You remember how Rock used to take it?
Oh my God! You mean inside? He'd do a back roll and he'd make sure that his feet draped across the top ring. I'm like, that's overselling just a bit much. Actually, honestly, all you need to do for the stunner is just have a fallback. Just have a good fallback, because you go down and fall back. And it makes more sense just to have a simple fallback, because if you think of the physics on how the stunner works, a simple fallback is all you need, because there's not that much force going into, especially if it's a bad stunner. If it's a bad stunner and you oversell it, it just looks ridiculous. I've always felt that a good fallback with your hands in the air and everything like that, simple onto your back and then just flat, dude, you've done the stunner justice.
I like the fallback too. I like it when it's clean and crisp. When someone takes it and when they drop, they almost kind of bump to the side. You should either be going down. You should either kind of do a half, or you should go down on your knees. Yeah, and then have the impact from your knees kind of push and
you
then
back.
Bounce up. Yeah,
exactly. And I've always felt that was the proper way to sell a stunner. Sell a stunner.
Speaking of selling finishers, I'm gonna chime in with this real quick. Complete tangent, but it is what it is. CM Punk go to sleep, right? You know the move, right?
CM Punk. All you need to do is just fall back.
Okay, so if anybody is completely unaware, and of course I'm sure people know who CM Punk is, this move was with non-wrestling terms. So just fireman's carry style. Okay,
fireman's carry into a high knee.
So he's draped across the back.
Yep.
CM Punk kind of ducks his head, brings the guy forward, and then drops his face onto his knee. Okay, so there's a guy in Japan, and I forget his name, who did it first.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Okay. I know who you're talking about.
So the way people used to sell it over in Japan, I think, is the way to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about this, if somebody was going to legit knee you in the face,
it'd be a knockout. It'd be a straight knockout. It'd be a cold knockout.
So think about the momentum, right? You're coming down, you're smacking that knee.
Yeah.
Do you think that your natural reflexes are going to be to smack it and then flip backwards onto your back? Or are you going to go boom, thud, and probably either fall where you're at or just kind of roll off to the side?
No. The second way, you when you thud, you're not going to have the momentum that carries you back, because the knee is going to be kind of like a knockout tangent. And what's going to happen is that when that knee hits you, if you watch any kind of knockout when it comes to MMA or boxing, a true knockout, man, nobody flies back.
Correct.
Nobody flies back. The lights go off and the body shuts off.
That's it. Yeah. Then that's it.
So honestly, if you're doing the go to sleep, you should actually be falling forward. Or slump over.
Just kind of roll right off. I'll settle for that.
Yeah, roll right off, because that sells the natural knockout effect that would happen when you're talking about a blunt force trauma move, like taking a knee. You're talking about taking a knee to the face. A knee to the face will a knee to the face is worse than any punch that you could possibly take, because that is just solid bone coming at you with bad intentions, man. I mean, that could cave, honestly, that could cave your fucking forehead in. Go ahead and ask Cyborg. Ask Cyborg. What was it? Alberto Cyborg. Remember? Was it MVP? Was it MVP that crushed in his skull with that knee?
Yes.
With that knee. So that knee, if you took a legit knee like that, it would crush in your forehead. It crush your skull, like it did for him. And he's got a permanent reminder of how devastating those knee strikes can be. So yes, I think honestly, you know who was really good at it, even though that he went backwards? John Cena was really good at selling the go to sleep, because he would just kind of slump. He would just kind of slump after taking it, and that was always the best way.
Kenta
Kobayashi, that's the one. Yep.
He was the guy that originally did it.
I should have known that. I mean,
yeah, I should have too. I shouldn't have.
I should have known that.
Yeah, Kenta.
Oh yeah. It was and you had to sell it as a knockout. Honestly, selling it as a knockout is the best way to sell it, as opposed to why when somebody hits a finishing move on you, why does it have to be spring loaded?
It doesn't.
Why does it have to be spring loaded?
And mind you, I think I know somebody's argument might be, oh well, it looks more visually appealing.
No, it doesn't. It looks more fake.
Yeah, in my brain, if I see a fucking guy go thud, boom, he's out, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, shit,
that's right.
He could be out. You know,
and
you second guess yourself. You kind of, for a second, you might be like, oh shit, maybe he's actually legit knocked out. He's not moving. I mean, think about the difference, because you're used to seeing the arms flailing, someone taking a bump, holding their neck. But what if you just saw a guy thud, and then, like, just for the people who can't see me, obviously, you're just laying there, like, you know, KO style, boxing KO style, MMA KO style, where these guys don't move. That's
why my favorite finisher of all time, even though that we're in the modern day, my favorite finisher of all time was Jake Roberts' DDT. DDT. Yeah. When he put you down, you didn't bounce. I mean, your head did, but when you got put in the DDT and he'd give you that slap on the back when you went down, dude, and when he did it, that's why they call it a finisher. When he hit you with the DDT, that was it. You were done. Because the way that he sold it like that was a debilitating move. And it is. And it is if you're fighting it, if you're fighting that, that could break your neck.
I've got a story, and this is I personally had this conversation with Jake. Mm-hmm. And I don't usually, you know, when I used to go to shows and stuff, and I tried not to mark out too much, and I don't consider this marking out, but you know, we were already talking. Okay. And I said, Jake, I was like, if you don't mind, man, let me ask you a question. He said, yeah, go ahead, brother, go ahead. Sorry. So I was like, when you DDT'd Ricky Steamboat on the fucking floor on the outside of the ring, mm-hmm. and you rolled him back in the ring and he was unconscious, I was like, was that a work? Was he legit knocked out? I was like, because I'll be honest with you, he sold so good and you did the fucking move so good. To this day, I don't know. I can't tell. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was his sell. He's like, brother, he was the heaviest fucking thing I've ever picked up in my life. So according to him, it was legit. It was a legit knockout. And he said that, because that was in WWE, and he said that Vince had kept coming up to him. You know, they were Ricky and Vince were talking about the move, and Vince and Ricky wanted to do this move on the outside, right on the concrete. And Jake's like, you know, I kept telling him, you can't do this move on the fucking concrete. You can't do it. It's gonna knock you out.
Not the way I do it.
Yeah, well, not the way he did it, not the way they did it, you know, because he was the first one to do it. So, like, the way they did it back then, it was a little bit different than they do now. But he kept telling him, he's like, I don't want to do this because you're going to get hurt. Like, you could fuck up your neck, you could fuck up your spinal cord, there's a litany of things that could go wrong. He's like, I don't want to do this. and Vince and Ricky was like, I could take it, brother. I can fucking take it. And back then, if you didn't know who Ricky Steamboat was built like a fucking brick house. You know, the dude was jacked beyond belief, just, you know, amazing shape. So he was, you know, this was back then, back in his prime. And I guess eventually they talked him into doing it. He said he reluctantly, and he said as soon as he, you know, switched back and he went back and they went down, he was like, I knew he was fucking out. He's like, I just knew it. And he said when he picked him up, he's like, if you watch the footage, it was a deadlift. Completely dead weight. He's like, there was no work.
Yep.
He went out. He said because he said Ricky took it legit. And so for those of you two who are, you know, learned in the art of wrestling, now when someone takes a DDT, usually that's you kind of put your arm over your head and you kind of bump into that, or you'll bump kind of like into their thigh a little bit instead of bumping straight down.
Yeah, they'll put that. Yeah, they'll put their thigh. Yeah, they'll put their thigh into it a little bit. You know who did the worst DDT? I hated when The Rock did the DDT. I hated, but you know, the only other person that besides Jake Roberts that I liked when he did the DDT in the very rare instances that he did do it was Owen Hart. Owen Hart gave a real solid DDT.
I'm trying to remember Owen's DDT.
He did a real solid DDT. The only thing I would stay away from Owen, I would never, if I were a worker and he said, let me tombstone you, I'd say, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck you. You've got two instances to where you were supposed to do a fucking tombstone and you do a pile driver. I wouldn't, I'm sorry. I know it was an accident, but it happened again. Unfortunately, there was another victim to that.
It wasn't an accident. He meant to do the sit-down tombstone. It wasn't an accident.
But you don't do that when you have no brace. You have no brace when you do a pile driver. It wasn't a tombstone. No, it wasn't a tombstone. It was set up for a tombstone and went into a pile driver. But when you're so for those of you who don't know about the dynamics when it comes to protecting your opponent, the pile driver is set there for a reason so that your arms, when they push up on the leg, act as a shock absorber so that you don't compress your neck. But when you are set up for a tombstone where you're holding your opponent around his midsection and he drops down into a pile driver set, there's no protection for your neck. And your neck goes basically right up into your spine, which is almost guaranteed broken neck country.
Well, when you know, and to that point too, yeah, when someone sets up for like a regular, you know, Undertaker tombstone pile driver, as long as the person taking the tombstone, as long as their head, the rule of thumb is, as long as their head is above the person's knee.
Yeah, above the knee, because when they drop the knee, you're fine.
You're fine. You're never going to hurt yourself. Now, the problem is he picked him up.
If Pete Rose can take a fucking tombstone from Kane and survive.
Right, yeah. It's completely fine. I've taken them before. It's completely fine.
I have too.
The problem
is there a lot of shock? Is there a lot of shock when that done? Even with a right, no, you can feel it as long as you said as your knee, as your head is above the knee.
Yeah. It's not bad at all. I think the problem is when he picked Austin up, particularly when he picked him up as if he was going to do the
sat
knee,
straight down, just
the regular version,
the tombstone, just sat straight down.
His head was square.
No, dude, it was poking out. It looked like he was. It looked like he was a baby. It looked like it was crowning.
Yeah,
and then just to sit down. Oh my God, I remember that, man. That was painful to watch.
He was way too fucking low, and I remember, really, so for his head, it literally, I mean, just think, if you really just visualize the move, Austin's head would have had to have been the lowest, slightly below the waist, at the lowest.
And that's scary.
Not fucking halfway down the thigh, which he was.
That's scary, man. That's some scary shit right there, actually. You know, I was watching the Broken Skull session the other day, and I watched the episode with
show. That's a good
dude. Steve Austin has gotten so good on the podcast. He is so good at leading in with questions And a lot of the people that he brings onto the podcast, he shared most of these stories with. So that makes it that much more interesting. But he had Bret Hart on the other night. And, Bret was a really cool interview because Bret is still just this incredible technician that is all about respecting the business and taking care of who he's working with. Because the one thing that he said that throughout his career, he could honestly say that was he stiff? Oh God, yeah. But he also learned Japanese strong style.
He never hurt anybody.
He never hurt anybody. He may have rocked your bell a couple of times, but there's a difference between hurt and injured.
Right.
And he never ever hurt anybody.
With the fucking exception, with the exception of Goldberg,
God.
No, hold on. And I'm gonna say this, and I don't give a shit what Bill Goldberg says. If anybody goes back and watches that, Bill Goldberg fucked himself up. He did it himself. It wasn't the kick that fucked him up.
It was part of it, though. It was part of it, though, man.
It might have been part of it when
head off.
When he bumped for that kick.
Yeah,
his head smacked the back of that mat.
Oh, I know. You could see and that's what he was holding, man.
And 101, when you're taught, you're drilled. You tuck your chin in, and when you're taking bumps, you tuck your chin in like you are.
He didn't have a choice though, because the force of the kick was so fucking great that
Now that might be possible. That might have played a big role, but it wasn't the kick. It was his bump.
Yes, but he did not put his hand up.
No, he didn't.
He took the full force of that goddamn kick, and he didn't have a chance to tuck his neck. But he also said that Bill was the worst person to work with because he even asked him. I mean, I was even watching the podcast. He even asked Bill, "Please don't hurt me. Right. I will sell whatever you want me to sell. I'll do whatever you want me to do," because this was still part of the Goldberg, streak.
Yeah.
So if I have to sell, then I will sell. I have no problem. Just don't hurt me.
Yeah.
And he fucking did. But see, the thing about it is Goldberg was never a good wrestler. Goldberg still is not a good wrestler. He was never a good wrestler. He was in the right place at the right time with the right character. And the character is what we all love. The character is what we all appreciate. Trust me, I remember in 1998 when he won the world title for the first time, I was marking out like a motherfucker to Goldberg.
Hulk Hogan in the Georgia Dome at Atlanta on Nitro.
On Nitro. And I'm gonna tell you something. I have respect for Bill Goldberg about what he accomplished in a very short amount of time. You have to look at that. Less than 1 year in the game, and he was on top of the wrestling world having a moment. Up until that point, the only other person to have the moment he has was the Ultimate Warrior, where he's holding the world title and the U.S. title over his head. And up until then, the Ultimate Warrior was the only person. And how fitting is it that both of them were notorious, both of them sucked in the ring, and both of them were notorious for hurting people.
I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, they were. Honestly, they were both huge at that moment.
Right.
But they could only take it so far because Goldberg does not have natural wrestling ability, or at least not the natural wrestling ability to protect.
And the same guy passed the torch to both of them.
Hulk Hogan, I know, but he didn't pass the torch because Hogan remained. So Hogan attempted to pass the torch.
Yeah,
but it didn't work. It didn't work. Goldberg held the title after that for 5 months, about 5 months, until he dropped it to Kevin Nash because they realized there was only so much that they could do with Goldberg after a while. Same thing with Ultimate Warrior. Warrior held it all the way from WrestleMania 6 up until the Royal Rumble 1991. And, he had a great run, but he was just so limited in his wrestling abilities that his character is what put him over, which is the same situation for Bill Goldberg. And I remember he dropped to Sergeant Slaughter, and I was so happy about that because how awesome was it that an Iraqi sympathizer during the Persian Gulf, not post or pre, but actually during the Persian Gulf, a former, honest to God, drill sergeant at one point, turned wrestler.
Yeah.
And somebody who is as red, white, and blue as they come, outside of Hacksaw Jim Duggan at the time, of course, ends up becoming an Iraqi sympathizer of all things.
It was a big deal.
It was my favorite heel turn. It was my favorite heel turn of all time because he got legitimate death threats. He had, oh my God, there were people that wanted his blood.
Yeah.
And I was so upset that Sergeant Slaughter dropped at WrestleMania. I was so upset that he dropped to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. I wanted him to hold until SummerSlam. I wanted evil to triumph at WrestleMania 7. And I wanted Hogan to take it back at SummerSlam. I think that would have been so much better because the SummerSlam match made in hell bullshit, because that was the match made in hell and then the match made in heaven with Randy Savage and Liz getting married.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth getting married. Yep. I hated that. It was just such a terrible match setup. And I would have loved to have seen evil triumph at WrestleMania for once. Let the bad guy go over, especially when he's got that much heat. Sergeant Slaughter was also a good wrestler. I mean, he was a good worker. He was a good worker. He was somebody that the regular WWE champion mold at the time didn't fit. It didn't really fit him at the time, but I loved him as it. He was good. His promos were fantastic. He had General Adnan, who didn't speak a word of English in his thing, and then he had Colonel Mustafa. The funny thing about it is, I find this funny because he's Iranian, so
right.
so kind of on the opposite side and everything like that. So that's kind of funny, but
back then it didn't matter.
No, because if you were on the bad side, that's all they associated.
Right.
If you were on the bad side, they really didn't care. Iraq, Iran, it didn't really matter them that because most Americans didn't know where that was until the news told you where it was.
Right.
Exactly. So it wasn't exactly. But yeah, man, I love that, man. That was probably one of my favorite. If anybody asks me about my favorite heels of all time, if we're talking about old school time, I'm definitely going to go with that turn with Sergeant Slaughter. Fast forward to the Ruthless Aggression era. My favorite of all time is definitely JBL.
Sergeant Slaughter, he did a really good interview. I don't know, maybe it's within the last 5 years on Sam Roberts' podcast.
Oh yeah.
And he talks about the whole when Vince approached him about doing the Iraqi sympathizer, and it's really
wasn't he terrified about it? Didn't he even have he had reservations about it first. He was like, I don't know, man.
Well, plus back then too, you have to think because back then, he did the fucking G.I. Joe cartoon. He was
an action figure. He was an action figure. He was a legitimate action figure through the G.I. Joe series.
For those of you that don't know too, just the faces back then, a lot of people wanted to be faces because that's when they made their money. If you were a big face, you had a lot of t-shirt sales, stuff like that.
Action figures, t-shirt sales,
merch.
You were a merch pusher.
Back then, the heels, there weren't as many heel marks back then. So like if you were a heel, you just had to know
merch was limited to you as well.
Right. That was very limited to you. So it's not like it is today where everybody's a fucking heel mark and it doesn't really matter if you're heel or face. If you're good, you're going to get t-shirt sales.
Well, back then, the mentality of it was the face pushes the merch.
Yeah. The face pushes the merch. And if you wore that face, you didn't want to lose. You didn't want to go to be heel because if you
lose money.
You were going to lose money. And he talked about how, Vince, I'm going to lose a fucking chunk of change here because I'm making hand over fist and merch and figure sales and G.I.
I'm not going to be able to do G.I. Joe if I'm an Iraqi sympathizer.
Yeah. And Vince, I think Vince promised him he would, I guess on the back end, he would make sure he would still
take care of him. Yeah, that he'd take care of him on the back end because he also knew I'm sure Vince had an idea of how this was going to not only affect his wrestling life, but his actual life, because people are idiots. Because people are idiots, and they see that, and they'll actually take it literally.
Yeah.
That this is how this person feels. I'm like, he sells it very good.
Yeah.
And that's all. And even I knew that back then. And this was 1991. So I was what? I was 14. I was 14 years old back then. And even at 14 years old back in 1991, I knew better. I knew that this was a heel. I knew that he wasn't a true Iraqi sympathizer, because if he were in real life, we would have seen it on another media level back then.
Because if you're CNN or something,
exactly, it would have been on the news somewhere, or some other kind of media level, and it wasn't. I mean, outside of Arsenio Hall, but Arsenio Hall was, famous for having the wrestler gimmick characters come on, and not necessarily the person. The only person that came on as themselves was Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan came in on, well, no. He'd talk about what was going on in his personal life. But if Ted DiBiase was on there, he'd be in character. Ultimate Warrior was completely in character. Randy Savage, I remember when Randy Savage came on with Zeus, Tony Lister. And of course, and he was in the Zeus character. So there's so many of the WWF guys back in the day that came in character. Hogan was the only one that came on that was relaxed, that was himself, that would talk about his personal life. Nobody else kind of talked about their personal life. And if Macho Man talked about his personal life, you wouldn't know what he's saying anyway. I mean, you just never knew where a Macho Man promo was going, and and I miss that so much. I mean, here we are talking about wonderful wrestling during the coronavirus time and everything. And guys, I'm not going to talk about it anymore, that shit, because life goes on and there's so many more interesting things to talk about. So that's why we're kind of going off on a tangent right now. But let's go ahead and let's break for wrestling. We'll come back to it in a second. But I want to go ahead and I want to touch base on the combat sports world and how it's being affected, because, for the first time, we're really having to put it on hold. We're really having to put the combat sports world on hold, and it sucks something awful, man. But it's understandable, because when your health comes first, no matter what. No matter what, your health comes first. So for those of you out there who are, really kind of cursing the government and saying that, it's their fault, and for you conspiracy theorists that are trying to figure out what's going on, saying that this was a man-made virus, that this was given to us from wolves, from bats, or whatever you want to say, there are more constructive things to be doing with your time. And the best thing that you could do right now is be around your friends, your family, and your loved ones, but keep your distance. This is the time when social media honestly should be at its apex, because this is the best way that we can still keep ourselves entertained, keep people entertained, and keep a distance, and keep a healthy, safe distance as we've been asked to. Just do what we're told. Just do what we're told in this situation, because the more that we do what we're told, the faster this will end.
The social distancing is currently 6 feet, and I don't know. I put a graphic out, Jeff.
Sounds like, I don't know if they mean, I don't know if that's like a literal term, like 6 feet under.
Well, I instead of 6 feet, I think maybe we should shorten it back to 3 feet apart, which just so happens to be the toe the line distance.
Oh, I love it! I love it.
In the bare knuckle squared circle, I'm like, let's shorten it to 3 feet.
Now that's some fun social distancing,
right?
Oh,
that's some good social distancing right there.
Yeah, toe the line and knuckle up, people. Oh my goodness, the card that we unfortunately lost out on was just going to be massive, man. And in my opinion, the one that I was looking forward to more than anything was the rematch between Christine Faria and Helen Peralta.
Oh my God!
We were going to see at the time when the smoke is cleared after the rematch that I cannot wait to see. We would have seen the most decorated female bare knuckle fighter in the history of the game, because whoever won that fight would not only be walking out with the Police Gazette Women's American Bare Knuckle Featherweight title, but they would have been walked out there the inaugural BKFC World Featherweight Champion.
Jeff, I'm not going to beat this with a dead horse, but maybe you have more inside scoop. And we already talked about this the last time, and you probably know what I'm going to ask you. So it's about the Fiera Peralta match.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. We already talked about why it wasn't main event because of Nico and the Wichita thing. Okay. Why did they push it? Do you know why they pushed it back another match? Because I believe at the press conference you had mentioned that it was now third fight from the
that Dave Rickles was the co-main event. You know something, man? You got to do what you got to do with the situation, and the big thing for us was really selling Kansas. It was our first time in Kansas.
So
I understand that
can I make my case?
All right, I'm listening. Make your case.
Okay, so and mind you, I will restate this part too. This is not a knock on Rickles or Nico or Harris, or it's nothing to do with them per se. Okay,
Spit it out.
So my point is, if you had Nico on the third fight of just example, if you had Nico on the first fight of the night, if you had Dave Rickles on the fourth fight of the night, people are still the local crowd are going to come see them regardless. In my opinion, them being main event, co-main, whatever, where they're at on the lineup is irrelevant to the local crowd. I think it's irrelevant.
It would have thinned out, though. It would have thinned out.
I don't think so.
I think so. I think so. I think it would have thinned out just a little. You
mean to tell me somebody that bought a ticket specifically to see Nico, let's just say, if he was now co-main, let's just fantasy world here. Let's say Peralta and Fiera was main event, right, for the title, and they put Nico and Chancey co-main event. You mean somebody would look at that and be like, whoa, I'm not going to this shit. This is bullshit now because
nobody's going to look at it that way. Of course not. Nobody's going to look at it that way. But some people, after so many fights, may have said, something, we were here to see Nico. We did. Even though that we're loving this, it would have thinned out to a degree. And Nico deserved to be in my opinion, Nico deserved to be the main event because, as I said before, it was historically relevant for what the girls were doing. I'll be the first and foremost to say that. However, not only was Nico the main ticket pusher, not only is Nico the only Olympic medalist that we've ever had in bare knuckle history, we have another age-old question that gets to be answered as bare knuckle progresses. We have the MMA fighter against the world-class boxer. Right. And I love those matchups.
I do too.
There were too many factors at play not to have Nico as the main event. There were too many.
And you know what? When I talked to Nico the Saturday, so the week before the card, and I'd never talked to him before. I don't even know if I ever actually heard.
He's an awesome kid.
He was really good, and he's a good talker. He was a really good talker, and we were talking about his past, and we were talking about him coming up through the ranks and just going to the Olympics, and he's got a really cool story. So it's not like I said. Even Nico, what's the explanation for why were they pushed back behind Rickles and Stevenson? Why was that co-main?
Well, because Rickles was another ticket pusher himself. He is one of the most popular MMA fighters in Kansas history. He is the longest tenured fighter in
Bellator. Title fight, Jeff.
I understand that a title fight. Yes, but how many times has a title fight taken a back seat in wrestling, sometimes at a Wrestlemania, to something else? Perfect example, Wrestlemania 8. Ric Flair, of all people, defending the title against Macho Man Randy Savage. And 3 more matches happened before the main event, which was Hogan and Sid.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's the relevance, unfortunately, and as of right now, the relevance
situation. It shouldn't have been that far down.
Well, that's why it was also one of the worst. That's why it was also voted one of the worst WrestleManias ever, because the card itself. Which you know what? That sucks too. I don't want to get too far off of the Kansas thing, but that sucks too because there were 2 unbelievable matches on WrestleMania 8. There was Ric Flair and Randy Savage, but they didn't steal the show. They came close, though. They came close. Yeah. No. Bret Hart and Roddy Piper for the IC belt.
Oh,
that stole the show.
Yes.
That stole the show. That was just absolutely fabulous.
The only non-title Mania main event that I'm okay with simply because of the stakes behind it. And I'm biased. And that was Taker and Shawn when they went on.
Oh, no. The stakes behind it were huge. But remember, are you talking? You're talking about the second one, right?
The second one was the main event. Yeah.
You're talking about the second one, which was the career match.
Yeah. The first. Yeah. 25 wasn't. They weren't main event for 25.
No, but 25 was the better match.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. 25 was the better.
That was actually one of the best matches of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I like 25.
Yes, you're right. With the stakes being that high, I absolutely agree. In fact, I wish that, like, perfect example, WrestleMania 7. I wish that Warrior and Savage with the career, that should have been the co-main. That should have been the co-main, because that was, in my opinion, as far as the career matches, the way that it's kind of set up, that was the best career-ending match of all time.
Yeah,
it was the best because of the positive spin that happened afterwards. Liz makes the run towards the ring. Randy accepts her back. And at one point, they were booing Randy out of the building. And at the end, they were in tears saying, man, I guess we're saying goodbye.
Right.
That is the epitome of how to tell a good story.
Yeah, agreed.
That was a good fucking story. And the way that the match played out, the most elbow drops delivered in succession, and somebody kicks out of it. Yeah. 5 elbow drops, which had never been done before. And then all of a sudden, Warrior, kind of his character kind of wigging out, looking up to the heavens. What is my destiny? What is it, Warriors? And everything like that. It added a weird element of drama to, and you also had the best commentators, really plugging the match. You had Bobby and Gorilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were just so many factors at play. But getting back to Kansas.
Yes.
I totally understand. Do I agree with it? It's not my place to agree or disagree with that situation.
It is, Jeff.
No. And do you know? No. Do you know why it's not? And I'm going to tell you why it's not my place. It's because I'm out there. I'm out there in the thick of the shit. I'm going to tell you something. If I was more of an analytical person that really wasn't out there in the thick of the shit, then maybe that I could have a little bit more say-so on that. But I know what happens behind the scenes. I know what happens out front. Yeah. I know what these athletes do. So it's not my place to really say anything. So the way that I look at it is that when it comes down to it, this is a business. And the purpose of the business is to make fans happy, is to make money and to make fans happy. And our first time out to the reason why I was so excited about this card is because of all the Kansas fighters that we had on the card.
Oh yeah,
we had quite a few. This was one of the first times that we had more local fighters on a fight card than almost anywhere, with the exception of a few Mississippi cards that we've had. We've had some, Mississippi hopefuls on that, but we had 5 fighters from Kansas on this card.
Yeah, we had a lot of. We were going to have a lot of work ahead of us for Knucklepedia because we were getting everything together.
Yep.
For entering, because it was, like you said, it was all new guys. It was mainly new guys going into there.
It was mainly new guys and Kansas guys coming in. So you really had to put over the Kansas fighters this time around because it's a first time there. And honestly, when it's our first time somewhere, I always feel it's best to put over the local fighters for the first time so that you get the local fight fans, number one, liking the product, and number 2, cheering for their local either debuter or their local fighter returning to the squared circle. So I understand the mentality behind it. I understand the reasoning for it. It sucks when a title match has to be pushed down the card, and is it not at least the co-main event? I do understand that, but I'm going to tell you one thing. Helen, Peralta, Christine, they didn't care. They didn't care. They weren't bitching and complaining about it. You know why? Because all they wanted to do was lock up. All they wanted to do was toe the line. They weren't
100%.
they weren't bitching and complaining that they weren't co-main event.
Right.
They were on the main card, and the way that they were looking at it, they were like saying, we may not be the co-main anymore, but we're going to steal the fucking show. And guess what? They guess what? They would have. So this is the way that I look at it, Josh, when it comes down to it. If they're not worried about it, you shouldn't worry about it.
I still do. I'm always going to worry about it. Like something else too. If Godbeer and Beltran was not the main event for BKFC 12, I would have.
Well, obviously, that's understandable because that's history in the making. Because
at first it wasn't. First it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But it did end up making its way.
I mean, they changed it like almost immediately. But
I know because that one was history, because we really at one point would have the best pound for pound heavyweight bare knuckle fighter in the world when the smoke is cleared on that one. And
undisputed heavyweight champion.
Not unofficial. Yeah. That would have been almost the lineal. That would have been almost the lineal undisputed world heavyweight bare knuckle champion. And it also would have made history because it was the first 7-round fight in BKFC history.
Yes.
Because they wanted 7 rounds and Dave wanted 7 rounds. And I love that idea. So that definitely needed to be the main event. I'm glad that it was changed at the time to the main event. Unfortunately, that has been postponed.
Right.
Anybody who says canceled, I'm like, canceled sounds so final. Nothing's final about that. Right. Everything is going to go through, people. Everything's going to go through. We just have to get past the shit first. Once we get past the shit, then we can get back to doing what we do best, and that is giving you the most exciting combat sport on planet Earth. And, it's easy for anybody to say that because they figure, they're just selling the product, No, I honestly believe that bare knuckle fighting is the most exciting sport on the planet today.
I will agree with that 1,000%, Jeff. I will agree with that one. I
don't need 1,000%. Agree with it 999.999%. So at least we can have a degree of separation.
I got you.
Otherwise, I'm going to think
you're a gray area. Just a little touch of gray area in between.
Otherwise, I think you're going to be suckling at my teat. And I can't have that. I can't have that. Not on Loudmouth Fisticuffs, man. No.
I was talking to Godbeer. And you can catch the interview, combatinsiders.com, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. I tell you what, man, as I was talking to him, we were just talking about the historical and the lineal ramifications of that fight, and just going through, and of course, if you don't know, Mark Godbeer is the BKB UK heavyweight champion. He's also the current Valor heavyweight champion. And then, of course, Joey Beltran is the current BKFC heavyweight champion and the
Police
Gazette Diamond Belt champ. Okay, so essentially these are, if you took the top organizations in bare knuckle, that's it,
and put them together. This is it. This is for all the marbles. For the whole Megillah, for the whole ball of wax, the whole enchilada. It would have gone down, and whoever walked away with that would be the best heavyweight in the world today.
And you know what Mark said, and it shows how serious and how heavy this was to Mark Godbeer. And he said, I get it, my belts aren't on the line, my BKB belt's not on the line, my Valor belt's not on the line. He said, if I lose to Joey, I might as well not even have those belts. Mm-hmm. I would literally give them to Joey. Just, you can have them, because in my head, he said, if I can't beat Joey Beltran, if I don't win that fight,
then I don't deserve him.
Then I don't deserve to be
any other
champion. He said this is how serious it is for me. He said, I want to be in the record books. I want to be, the bad. And I use the reference. This is for the baddest man on the planet in bare knuckle. I mean, we haven't had that yet. We haven't had I guess you could argue Joey is right now. I mean, we've come
close with Lopez and Beltran. Lopez and Beltran, we've come damn motherfucking close to have the baddest man on the planet when it comes to the heavyweights. But another thing that I like about this, man, another thing I like about it is how how excited Godbeer is about the potentially holding a Police Gazette belt.
He's fucking pumped.
Dude, he loves the idea of representing the Police Gazette because he not only values, but he respects the history,
Yes,
the lineage that's behind that belt. And a lot of people don't understand how huge it is when it goes back to the original Police Gazette belts. I was hanging out with, of course, Scott Burt this weekend, and Scott recently made a trip down to over to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And they went into the archives and they pulled out the original gold belt that John L. Sullivan himself wore during the Police Gazette. And at the time, this was the gold plates behind it. I mean, there was no cloth back. There was no leather straps. There was no cloth straps. This was all solid gold across, and jewels and diamonds. And what it was valued at $10,000 back in the late 1800s. So you can just imagine what it would be worth today. And what was really cool on that, there was some side stories that Scott was talking to me about. On the belt itself, it's scattered across with all kinds of gems. There's all kinds of gemstones. But apparently, John L. Sullivan was such a huge drunk that sometimes when he couldn't flip a bill or he wanted a drink, you could actually see in the belt gouges in the belts where he would like gouge out some of the gems to go ahead and pay for his bar tab. I'm serious, man. That's some awesome history, man. I can't wait for you. Hopefully everything will come to pass in July, and we will be able to do the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2020. And Josh, if you get an opportunity to come over to Belfast and see the history,
I'm coming, brother. I'm coming.
Oh my God, the history 100%. Behind it. I haven't posted it because I feel real bad about it because I should have done it last year, but I actually did when everybody had kind of moved on after the training bar tour. I actually did a 10-minute video walking through just me and showing the stuff, and I've never posted it, but I think I'm going to post it now because it's 10 minutes. No, the only reason I did it because I didn't think people wanted to listen to my bitch ass for 10 minutes. That's a tall order, but it's not the best camera work because it was just me. I wish I had somebody actually filming so that they would have kept everything in frame. But there was some really cool stuff to see.
Maybe we will this year, Jeff. Maybe we will.
You know what? We need to. We definitely need to because the history and the significance behind the training barns and the way that they have been preserved in Belfast is absolutely.
It deserves to be filmed. It deserves to be filmed.
It is as Americana. It is as much a part of American history as the stars on the American flag. It really is. It really is. It's really incredible. And the entire small town, and I do mean this small town of Belfast, is completely centered around it. And I love that they've adopted the moniker Knuckle Town, USA.
Yeah,
it's fucking badass, man. I feel like it's a second home over there. And Scott, is always the historian, always has a story to tell you about the past. I mean, somebody he is just so enriched in bare knuckle history, and somebody who knows it as much as he is. When you get a chance to really sit down and talk with him, I mean, it's really incredible.
He's such a good storyteller. He's an
incredible storyteller. He's an incredible storyteller.
I just happened to look up too while you were talking. So I looked up $10,000 in 1880.
Yep.
Today, would be worth $253,605.
There you go. It went from 10,000 to $250,000 over 100 years later. So that tells you right there that it'd be the most expensive belt in the history of belts. Yeah. Well, I take that back. I forget about the WBC diamond belt for Pacquiao. That was $1 million.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was $1 million.
What, like, was it legit? I mean, I know they said that.
No. It was valued legitimately at $1 million. The big green emerald belt, the diamond and emerald belt. Yeah, it was $1 million. Yep. That's part of. You know what? I'm trying to think. I don't think he has it because I think something happened on taxes that he had to give it back or something, or give it up. I don't know if he has it, but I heard that there was something going on, and I don't believe that the diamond belt is in his possession. I don't believe it is. Speaking of Mayweather, the world was saddened the other day. Roger Mayweather passed away at 58, and probably one of the greatest boxing trainers that there ever was. So responsible for bringing us one of the greatest defensive fighters of our time. And it sucks to check out at such a young age. On top of that, 58 years old, but talk about living life to its fullest at 58. Trust me, he had a full life, and he was along for one hell of a ride. So, rest in peace, sir. You really, your contribution to the boxing world was unlike anything ever, and you will not be forgotten.
And your rest in peace, Roger. We just put up an article about that on the website because I just thought we had to. We don't usually touch on like traditional boxing stuff too often, but I just thought he was too important, just to the history of everything. Not to just too.
Oh no. He is. He's part of the annals in boxing history. Absolutely, he is just as relevant as anyone else at that level. So we definitely have to give. We have to send our respects, out to the Mayweather family, about what they're going through right now, because that is a tremendous loss. It's interesting to think about what's in store for Mayweather at this time, in his career, how he's going to move forward and what he's going to do, because I know that they had been teasing the idea of Khabib and
Connor in the same night. That's what they were talking about.
Yeah. And I think that's a terrible idea. There's money behind it, and that's all it is. At that point, it's just collecting a paycheck. If you were healthy, I could see you going as hard as you could up until the point where, you're like, why would I stop making money? If I'm making this much money, why would I stop? Well, I think sometimes maybe there's a little bit more to that because, he's not going to be hurting. He's got very good people overseeing his finances. He's not like Mike Tyson. He's not like Evander Holyfield or Riddick Bowe. He didn't squander what he had. He's a versatile investor. Yeah. He's across the board. He has so many businesses, and he's a successful entrepreneur. People can say that they're entrepreneurs, but that doesn't mean that's just a title. You may not know how to run a business successfully, but he is a successful entrepreneur on top of that. So I would think, you've got your legacy intact. You are undefeated. You have actually passed Rocky Marciano's undefeated record. I'd call it a day and enjoy my time. He's our age right now. I think he's the same age as me. I think he's 42. He's about 42 years old. Everything, dude. What a wonderful way to call your career and enjoy the rest of your life. Healthy, happy. You have your brain intact. You have your mental facilities intact, and you're worth probably almost $1 billion. I'd say enjoy it.
Plus 50-0 just sounds so damn good.
Doesn't it? It's just rolls right off the tongue.
51-0. Okay, yeah, it sounds good still, but
I like 50-0.
50-0, just a nice round number, and it's just hey, I'm 50-0.
I'm 50-0, bitches, man, and nobody can really say that. And there's very few people that can actually say that when they decide to call it quits. And I think maybe it's about that time. But then again, I could say that, but when it comes down to it, it's up to the fighter. If they want to keep going on, if they feel that they have to be, doing that for the sake of the fans or for the sake of a paycheck or whatever the fuck it is, man, they're the only ones who are going to be able to say it's over. I honestly think, especially at that level, maybe you should call it quits if the joy is lost. There's no joy. If there's no joy anymore, then you're just doing it for the sake of a fucking paycheck.
Yeah, and I'll insert this too. We'll kind of move on, but in all reality, for the amount of money that he's getting paid,
ridiculous,
or that he would be getting paid to fight Khabib and Conor in the same night, it's probably astronomical, probably the highest single.
It would be. It would be. It'd be the highest that a professional athlete would ever make in one evening.
But let's be honest. If it's straight boxing, it'll be probably less. The amount of effort he'll probably have to give is probably less than a sparring, like a typical sparring day. I mean, let's be honest.
That was the case with Conor to begin with.
Yeah,
I don't see what they would think would drastically change. And with Khabib, Khabib's a decent striker, but when you put him up against Floyd would do the same thing that he would do.
It would be worse than Conor.
It would. He'd toy with him. He'd toy around with him, and then as they get into the later rounds, or quote unquote the championship rounds, even though that there was no title on the line, that's when he decides to turn it on and embarrass you and really start showing you up and saying, something, this is not your world.
Right.
This is not your world. And I think he almost may have seen what Conor was doing as an insult, because he didn't have to pay his dues in boxing. He coasted into boxing on his name.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see disrespect in that, because you didn't pay your dues. You didn't start off in the basement and work your way up to the top, as Floyd did, even though that Floyd had a little bit better pedigree than some other boxers have at the beginning. He was very fortunate. He was very fortunate that, he had a preternatural sense of what he was doing, as opposed to other people who start who have a really rocky, a very tumultuous start. And he didn't even have one pro fight, one pro boxing event before he stepped into there. I mean, he was 0-0 in boxing, coming up against the greatest defensive fighter of our generation. And there were people that were saying that he has a puncher's chance. I'm like, something, guys, I understand that anything can happen, but I'm sorry, are you retarded? I'm sorry, and I don't give a fuck if you don't like the way that I
you can't say that word, Jeff.
I can say whatever the fuck I want. This is Loudmouth Fisticuffs. I am not taking the PC approach, and if you people want me to, I only have a few words to say. Kiss my ass. Seriously. No. That's what I have to say for that. Fuck that. I'm not going to be PC. I am going to say what I want, and I'm going to have a good time. Loudmouth Fisticuffs is not about basking in the soft glow of our participation trophies. What we're about having a good fucking time, and if you take offense to what we have to say, you have the right to be offended, and I have the right not to fucking care.
Boom. There it is. That's the intro. The intro right there.
That is the intro. That is the intro, as clear as day as we could possibly make it. But you have to look at the situation, Josh. Like I said, 0-0 coming up against 49-0.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
It's beyond ridiculous. I love the fact that there were so many people on the Conor bandwagon. I was not one of them, because I'm a realist. I am a realist. Now, I understand. Granted, Conor has a left that could move a tank. But Conor was not a boxer. His pace didn't say boxing. He wanted to go in for takedowns. I don't know how many fucking times during the fight. I swear to God, he looked like a fish flopping around on the beach. He did not gravitate. And there were all these people that were saying, "Oh, he looked pretty good. He gravitated." I'm like, are you blind? Are you watching this? He's gasping for air.
He made it to the 10th round because Floyd
wanted him
make
to.
it. Yeah, Floyd let him into the 10th round.
Yes.
Not because he was like this some fucking boxing phenom going in there against the greatest. Like, it's just. And I'll tell you where my stance was. I wasn't necessarily pro Conor that fight. I think I was pro MMA. In the sense, like, I guess I was hoping, realistically, I knew it was probably like a fractional of a chance that he could catch him. And even still, I knew that left hand in an MMA glove versus a, traditional boxing glove, it's not the same. It's just not the same.
It's not even close to the same. It's closer to a bare knuckle with an MMA glove, and Conor knows that. But it was a bad pairing. They didn't pair well. They didn't pair. It was a speed bag versus a punching bag. It didn't look right pairing up. Obviously, we know who Conor's greatest opponent was and probably ever will be. Do I need to say anything, Josh? Who was Conor's greatest opponent?
It's either Nate or Khabib.
No, it's Nate.
It's a Nate. Okay.
No. Because we still need a trilogy on that.
I don't think we don't need one.
Yeah,
we don't need one.
You know why? You know why? It's not necessarily to close out the trilogy. It's because they match up well. And when you match up well, you make good fights. And people want to see good fights because these guys match up well. Both fights were fantastic.
They were.
Both of them, they were not lackluster fights. They were both bloody. They both kicked the shit out of each other. And that's what we want to see. So that's why I want to see. It's not necessarily because we need closure to close out the trilogy. It's because they match up well. And when people match up well, that's what we want to see.
You know what I like? And I think he should do this more often. When Conor came in against Cowboy, and the fight was at 170, he decided to come in at 170, come into the fight at 170, not cut weight, not have to worry about all that. Yeah, would he be given a few pounds to Cowboy? Yeah, maybe a few pounds.
Obviously,
maybe a few. But
because Cowboy's a natural welterweight.
Right, he's a natural welterweight. But he was so clean and crisp, and he looked
great. He looked great.
Conor of old, like he was.
Yeah.
It's a shame that fight didn't go longer because I think we really would have seen some good stuff out of him. We saw it already, but
I saw comfortability in Conor that I haven't seen before in a long time. Because when Conor goes down to 145, it's just too fucking much.
Yeah,
it's just too fucking much. He looks like a crackhead at 145, man. I mean, he looks like he's just suffering, just complete malnutrition, malnourishment. I mean, he looks emaciated. He looks emaciated practically. He looks like a dog that you pick up at, like a tattooed dog that you pick up at a friggin' shelter, man.
I think 170 not cutting weight, I think might be perfect for him.
Even though that he is a little short for 170, though. He's 5'9", and that's kind of short for welter.
I think he would do fine against any other 170. I think he'd be fine. I really do.
Well, I mean, he looked comfortable. The weight cut wasn't, he didn't really have to have a weight cut and everything like that. It wasn't as traumatic on his body. And 55, yeah, exactly. It wasn't as traumatic on his body. So that's always a good thing because you don't have to worry about, drastic weight cut measures that so many fighters still do. Even when the athletic commission is just basically telling them that we don't put up with this shit anymore, but they still do it anyway. And the one thing that people don't understand, the true MMA fan understands how traumatic on the body a weight cut is.
It's terrible.
How truly it is. You are causing damage that will eat away at you physically over the years, and it will come to bite you in the ass later. It absolutely will, because what you are doing is you are putting your lymphatic system and your kidneys. Yeah, you're making them work so much harder than the human body is actually supposed to handle, especially your kidneys. It's not uncommon for fighters to have temporary renal failure at times in their lives because they're just, because they're draining their fucking kidneys. I've seen it to the point to where there was hardly any, where muscle fibers are so dried out that they actually break off into the bloodstream, and that can kill you.
Yeah.
That can kill you. So
I say this, and tell me if you agree with this. I think if somehow, I don't think it would ever actually be anything that would be like in like a rule set or any commission would do. I don't think. I think that they should restructure everything, and you find your weight, find it a good weight. I'm just using Conor for example because I was just talking about him at 170. No more cutting, maybe beyond, maybe 5 pounds, maybe like a 5 pound allowance for cutting weight. Beyond that, you won't be allowed. I know one kind of does that already because one you can't cut water weight right with one. So
I'd be okay with 10. I'd be okay with 10 pounds. 10 pounds, I'd be okay with. 5, I'd be okay with 10.
But wouldn't you think we would get, because you hear a lot of these guys always talk about how, the weight cut is the fight before the fight. You hear that phrase a lot.
Oh yeah. That's the hardest part. I'll say that's the hardest part of the fight.
Instead of worrying about cutting all this weight, because like Connor talked about, he's like, I didn't have to worry about cutting the weight so much because I came in on point. I was already pretty much there. I could spend more time on my game plan, my training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you have these guys closer to the weight that they're fighting at, theoretically across the board, wouldn't you see, better fights?
Depends on the physiology. Depends on the physiology. Everybody's different. Everybody cuts different. Everybody reacts to weight cuts differently. And that's why I can't just say yes, because everybody's different. If everybody wasn't different and it were, based on that, then yes, I'd probably agree with you a little bit more. But because everybody's physiology is just so incredibly different that, there are people that have better fight genes that take to weight cuts like a fish to water. And then there are other ones where it's more traumatic. Now, it's always going to be traumatic no matter how you are, no matter what kind of genes you are. It's still going to be traumatic to a degree. But the level of trauma varies from fighter to fighter depending on your physiology and your genealogy. So I think because of that, it's hard to say, give you a vague yes to that. Because that's the only reason why I would not 100% agree. And I think that's a solid argument.
Fair enough.
I think that's a solid argument on that. Yeah.
Before we close out the show, I do want to touch on real quick Khabib versus Tony. We just heard that New York, the fight,
the Barclays, it was going to be at the Barclays.
It's not going to be there. It's Dana has said that the fight will happen one way or the other. He hasn't really given too many details.
Well, I've heard Dubai, but that could be just hearsay.
You think it happens?
I don't know. I think that it's running a risk. I think it's running a risk with the way that we're going right now. I think that the most important thing to these guys right now should be their overall health, and I don't think it should be risked.
Agreed, but it's Khabib versus fucking Tony Ferguson.
Oh, I get it. I mean, it's been put off 5 times, and we've been dying to see this. And the press tour was just heating up to where Tony's really sharp on the microphone, and Khabib is starting to really throw those jabs in himself. But Khabib has always been more about the person, throwing jabs at the person rather than their family, their religion, everything. Right. And the minute that you start getting into that, I'm like, that's cheap heat, man. That's cheap. It's cheap heat, and it's wrong. It's just wrong. That has nothing to do with the fight.
Agreed.
And I understand why you're doing it. You want to get under the skin, and getting personal is the best way to get under a fighter's skin, because you figure that head game is going to stay with them and it's going to throw them off the game. I'm like, but it didn't happen with Conor. So why would you think? I mean, Conor talks the shit game better than anybody. Better than that. Nobody talks the shit game better than Conor. I mean, Tony did some fucked up shit, but Tony didn't throw a fucking dolly through the window of a bus. I mean, maybe if he was given the opportunity, he might. But there was a lot of shit going on that was really fucking personal between him and Khabib. And Khabib wasn't. You didn't shake him. You didn't shake him out of the tree, man. He was still there, solid as a rock, ready for you. And you also have to understand where he comes from. I mean, he's a Dagestani fighter. He's coming from Makhachkala. These are some of the toughest people on the planet. I mean, this is a kid who was wrestling with bears when he was 9 years old. And if you watched his recent training for the Tony Ferguson fight, you saw him in a cold river swimming against the stream, swimming against the current. I'm like, I don't know what's more badass. I mean, that's straight up like Spartan training shit.
Yeah.
And you're not going to, I mean, if Conor couldn't shake him, Tony, you're not going to. The best thing that you can do is Tony has an incredible skill set. Tony is an absolute warrior. He has been through some bloody fucking battles, and he has bloodied up a lot of great fighters. And I think that he needs to rely on his skill set, which is very versatile. In fact, I think he's the most versatile fighter that Khabib has come up against. This is by far the most versatile fighter. So that is what is going to make him so dangerous against Khabib, is because he's that versatile, because he's great on the ground and he is a natural striker. That's a dangerous combination. That is a dangerous fucking combination. And that's why I'm so excited. I'd rather see this fight over the Conor rematch any day of the week, twice on Sunday. Conor and Khabib too. Yawn, motherfucker, yawn. I want to see fucking Tony Ferguson get in there and get his hands bloody.
Our pal Chael Sonnen, he was talking about the idea of what if the UFC, would it be viable for, instead of a full card, just, especially in the coronavirus era now that we're in.
God, please don't call it that. Please
sorry.
Don't.
I'm sorry. I'm
please
sorry.
Please don't call it that, because that sounds so permanent. I don't want to hear that shit.
It's terrible. But so to the point, just kind of in this era that we're in right now, unfortunately, he talked about how maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe it would make it easier. Just a one fight pay-per-view, Khabib and Tony.
Well, I mean,
maybe obviously you couldn't charge the full whatever.
Obviously not. No, it wouldn't be a $50.
Would you pay $20? I'd pay $20-$30 for it. I would.
I think between $24.95 and $29.95 for the one fight. With a whole bunch of video packages and build-ups and interviews and what have you.
Yep.
Maybe in that sense, yes, because it's unprecedented, because it's the first time that it's just the one fight being sold without any undercard or main card, and just having that particular fight as the focal point of the entire pay-per-view. Yeah, maybe so, because like I said, it's unprecedented. It's like what's happening with WWE right now on all these, empty venues. I say enjoy them while they're here, because we will never see them again once this is passed. So it's unprecedented. So that would be unprecedented as well. So yes, I would. I would pay that to see that, because it would be something that I would never forget. And this day and age, when you order something, you can get it on streaming networks, which means you can record it and you can watch it whenever you want to, and have that permanent reminder of history in the making, because it would be history in the making. So yes, I would. I would.
And on that note, people, if you enjoy the show, you can get a permanent reminder. If you slap that notification button and subscribe, you will be notified every single time Loudmouth Fisticuffs is uploaded, when we upload a new video, or for that matter, any Combat Insiders media that we put out. You will be notified first and foremost. Very important. We appreciate all of your, patronage. We appreciate it so much. We've been getting a lot of good feedback here recently, and
that's because we're having fun. That's because
we're having a lot of fun,
because we are having legitimate fun. And another thing we definitely want to put out there, because we are in the quote unquote coronavirus era. Fuck, I hate saying that, but something, Josh, there's a truth to that, unfortunately. We're going to have more time now, because of these unfortunate quarantines and social distancing, to actually bring you a whole lot of content. And not all of it is going to be surrounded around this clusterfuck that the United States seems to be undergoing as of right now. But there's all kinds of stuff that we can talk about that's coming up. And because there is going to be, because something, this isn't the end of the world. This isn't the end of days. Things are going to come up. Things are going to get better. The fight world is going to get back to it. Hopefully sooner than, like we said, hopefully sooner than later. I am hoping that business as usual around May. Hopefully it won't go all the way to September or August, as some people have predicted. But hopefully it'll be around May, if not June, at worst case scenario, to where, it's business as usual. People are, heading back to arenas. Fighters are gloving up. Bare knuckle fighters are taking off the gloves. It's business as usual. We're all having a great time. We've got the fans back where they belong, in their seats, cheering, living vicariously through the fighters. It's all coming back, people. It is. This is just a temporary setback, but we got to make the best of it. And the best way that Loudmouth Fisticuffs can make the best of it is by giving you more content as we're going. This is show number 5. This was a great show. We got show number 6 coming your way next week. I'm sure that we're going to have plenty to talk about. Josh, I'm having fun with this, man. How about you?
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Like I said, we've been getting good feedback just across the entire board of Combat Insiders. And I'll go ahead and throw this in there too. We got a new partnership with MMA Power Hour. So
I'm excited about that.
Go check those guys out. We got a lot of big things I cannot discuss just yet. I would love to, but we got certain stuff that we're still working out. But we have a really cool thing coming, and it's going to surprise a lot of people, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome, I think, for everybody. Our social media has been blowing up, and I can't say thank you enough. It's been amazing the last few weeks for whatever reason. I'm not complaining. It's been awesome. Our numbers have exploded, and that's because of you guys. It's because of everybody listening, and we appreciate it so much. And I guess
absolutely.
With that said, we will be back next week. So again, check that notification bell so you'll know exactly when we get uploaded. And that's Jeff Houston, Mr. Live Worldwide. I am Joshua Furs from CombatInsiders.com, and you were listening to Loudmouth Fisticuffs. We're out.
Peace out, 5,000. See you at episode number 6, baby.